At that time, we have Stone Cold Steve Austin emerging on the scene. He is like Stone Cold Steve Austin. He won the King of the Ring in 1996. But like I said, at SummerSlam, he's wrestling on the pre-show. It was kind of like they had to pretty much put him on ice and wait for WrestleMania when he wrestles against Brett, which was kind of a throwaway match on the card to make sure that they're on there. Austin didn't even know. There was like no meeting to sit down and say like, hey, you're going to wrestle Brett. Austin is at home, just has Raw on, and all of a sudden he hears, hey, Brett versus Austin, submission match, WrestleMania, it's booked, it's signed, sealed, and delivered. And he's like, I don't even have a finisher. What the hell am I going to do? But they end up putting together a great match. It's looked at as most people, if it's not one of the best WrestleMania matches of all time, a lot of people think of it as one of the best wrestling matches. Austin is a guy that they got lucky on. Stunning Steve Austin had a really good career in WCW. He sort of got pushed to the side during that Hulk Hogan era. And he had some bad feelers. He wasn't really mixing with Eric Bischoff. Eric Bischoff called him one day to try to find out why he wasn't at center stage, why he didn't go to work. And his wife at the time picks up the phone, says, Steve, Eric's on the phone, and loud enough for Eric to hear it on the other side. Steve tells Eric, tell him I'm not here. And Eric's like, if you don't want to be here, if you don't want to talk to me, if you don't want to show up to work, we'll let you go. And they release him. The bad thing for Steve Austin, he was going through having a bad neck at the time. He doesn't really know what he's going to do. He's got no money rolling in for him and his family. Paul Heyman, who had seen him in WCW, I think he even managed him. I think Stunning Steve Austin was in the Dangerous Alliance, if I'm right. Knows Austin can work. Calls him up, trying to get him to go. And he's like, I got this bad neck. And he's like, that's fine. You just do promos. You've heard this 1,000 times. Stone Cold Steve Austin has told this story on the podcast. He goes there. Heyman says that he knew it was a short-term plan. He knew that ECW was a training ground that WCW and WWF just stole from all the time. So they got as much as they could out of him in a short period. Austin comes in because of Triple H's mistake. Well, not really his mistake, but because Triple H is the only one they can punish, he ends up winning King of the Ring. In his first match, he wrestles against Mark Merrow. Merrow kicks him in the lip. He busts his lip open. He has to rush to the hospital. He gets 16 stitches. He comes back. He's going to wrestle Jake the Snake Roberts as he's about to go out there. Doc Hendricks, why do I always call him that? Tells him, hey, just so you know, you're wrestling against Jake. Jake just delivered a religious promo on you. And that's where Austin goes, oh, religious promo? All right. He thinks of the guy at the football game with the John 3:16 sign, comes up with Austin 3:16, gets that line off, and he had, picked up a little thing to end the interview on so it would end well. And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so. All of a sudden, Stone Cold Steve Austin, although he's not pushed because they don't really have storylines for him right out of the gate, everybody's an Austin fan. Austin 3:16 shirts become one of the biggest things that there is in wrestling. It's battling against the NWO, against the hottest t-shirt there is out there in wrestling, and they're off to the races. At that time, WWF goes out, they bring in Mike Tyson. Eric Bischoff talks about the fact that he was surprised that WWF took a chance to bring Tyson in. It's only 3 years prior to him going to prison and being released, for rape. I don't know. I don't think you can get bailed out for rape. I don't think it's only a 3-year sentence, but I don't know how he got out or got off. He came back. He did a little bit of boxing. The boxing, people wanted to see him. It was a draw. I remember a few of his fights were actually on Fox instead of being on pay-per-view. But maybe that was because he was fighting lesser talent instead of just jumping right back in and fighting Evander Holyfield or something like that. So, WrestleMania, 14 was built around DX versus Austin, but Mike Tyson was such a big part of it. From the Royal Rumble to there, it really was the introduction to, Austin versus Vince, Stone Cold versus Mr. McMahon, because they were trying to get the match to be Shawn Michaels versus Mike Tyson, as it was like going to be a wrestler versus boxer for a championship match, but it was Austin that came down there saying that he wanted to have the match, and Vince is saying like, you ruined it, like Austin is getting in there and he's kind of bumping uglies with Tyson in the ring, and Tyson and Austin. DX is out there now, they're pushing like, hey, we want to see Austin versus Tyson, because they don't want to have Shawn wrestle and lose the championship to Austin. Really, really good stuff. Stone Cold Steve Austin always talks about the match isn't that good, and that Vince kind of like consoled them and was like, hey, we're off to the races from here. Don't worry about tonight. You got the belt. That's all we really needed to do. Shawn's hurt. He gave us what he had, but it wasn't like that much. I've always thought, I have the feelings that I have when I watch that match on pay-per-view. I actually had to go out of my way to make sure that I could watch that thing. For some reason, we didn't have the box at my mom's house. My girlfriend didn't have a box, so we ended up like going to like a friend's house who didn't even really watch wrestling, but they said that they would, if I gave them the money, they would watch the show for us. So it is what it is. I remember that show and just being so pumped to watch that one. The night after really is like the stamp of approval that we're doing Vince versus Austin. Austin comes out with the new championship belt. It's got that blue leather that we don't ever really see again. Vince and Austin, they pose with the belt. Austin comes out wearing a suit and then ends up ripping it off, and then Austin and him are going back and forth about, standing up to authority. Some people say that that's one of the best feuds that there's ever been in the history of wrestling.